Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just give me a minute.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. How is Padmanayan Prabhuji? Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Okay. Okay, let's resume from here. And do that discussion. This is this is 21. Correct. Okay. During the 7 days in which Parikshit Maharaj had prepared for death, Shukadeva Goswami had spoken only Srimad Bhagavatam. But because Srimad Bhagavatam is the sum and substance of all bhakti scriptures, those scriptures reveal their conclusions during the discussion. Uttara wants to hear the essence of all devotional literature, and our son will answer accordingly. The Bhagavatam spoken by Shri Shukadeva is all beautiful, both in text and in purport. That is because Srimad in Srimad Bhagavatam also means beautiful, filled with beauty. Both in Srimad Bhagavatam, nothing in Srimad Bhagavatam is superfluous. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukha amrita dravasam yutam yuvata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. Oh, expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Ityadi vachanataha satam anubhavacha Sri Bhagavate he amsho na asti. She Sanatana Goswami notes that because of statements like this, it is concluded that there is actually nothing meant to be rejected from Srimad Bhagavatam. It is also the experience of saintly authorities. Authorities like Sutta Goswami testify to this truth from their own experience. Tathapi, still, Sri Gopinatha Charanarinda Makaram Daikal Lampatata Vishesha Sampannebhyas Tadiya Adya Rasa Krida Sambandhi Katha Vishesham Vina Na Anyat Kimape Rochate. Still, those who have been imbued with extreme greed to taste the lotus feet, the honey from the lotus feet of Lord Sri Gopinath. For them, except for that portion within Srimad Bhagavatam, nothing else appears. Authorities like Sutta Goswami testify to this truth from their own experience, that the entire Sri Bhagavatam is tasty. Nonetheless, perfect devotees may feel inclined to listen to some parts of the Bhagavatam more than others. Now, this is particularly talking about perfect devotees of Lord Gopinath. We are not talking of sadhakas, we are talking of perfect souls. The extraordinary Vaishnavas have developed an unquenchable thirst for the honey flowing directly from Sri Gopinath's lotus feet, feel no attraction for hearing anything other than Srimad Bhagavatam, just as even beginners in the process of devotion service no longer want to hear about Jnana Yoga and impersonal liberation, or as those striving for liberation lose interest in topics of material development and worldly pleasures. Every discussion in Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact, glorifies Krishna, the lover of the gopis, but pure devotees, perfect pure devotees, sometimes consider the passages not directly describing those intimate glories less important. The self-realized Vaishnavas must be allowed their preferences, but neophyte devotees should not cheaply imitate them. Devotees not free from faults should strictly follow the complete course of the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam from the first chapter of Canto 1 through the last chapter of Canto 12. By repeated systematic study of the entire Bhagavatam and its authorized explanations, devotees can aspire to gradually become fit to taste the immortal nectar hidden within it. In fact, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary to the second canto, specifically makes this point that Vaishnavas should not neglect the topics of creation, maintenance, annihilation, which are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Krishna's relationship with the external potency. He says that Vaishnavas should listen to them the way they listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam's descriptions of Krishna's pastimes with the internal potency. And he says that this we can understand from the conversations between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. So, Sadhaka Vaishnavas should not attempt to imitate Siddha Vaishnavas. Here, all of this is all straight coming from every discussion at Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact, glorifies Krishna, the lover of the gopis. This is all coming straight from Sanatana Goswami. Yadyapi cha Shri Gopinatha Pada Padmayoh Tat Priyatamanam cha Mahatmye eva sarvesham tad upakyanadikam upakyanadi namapi tatparya. Still, तथापि साक्षाद्विद्या तेषु तत्स्फुटं नास्ति इति तद्रसिकेषु हृदयापूर्तैस्तेषां हेयत्वमेव पर्यवस्तीति. Dick. Gauranga is not adding his own additional masala or anything. He's directly working out the conclusion straight from Sanatana Goswami's own commentary. Shukadeva, Narada, and other Vaishnavas of their caliber contributed to this Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Vaishnavas of their caliber. The exact expression is Bhagavatottama. The best of the Bhagavatas like Shukadeva, Sri Shuka, Sri Narada, and so on. And it is approved by great sages like Parashara and Vyasadeva. It presents the absolute truth clearly, not vaguely like some textbooks on mantras and yoga, or dishonestly like unauthorized pseudo-spiritual works. It presents the truth thoroughly, not superficially like the works of unqualified authors who have little to say and who say less out of fear of losing their readers' attention. The essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by Maharaj Parikshit to his mother, forms the ultimate summary of Vedic knowledge. Very nice. Okay. Worshipping Lord Madhava at Prayag. Ekada Tirthamurasanye Prayage Munipungavah Maghe Pratah Krita Snanah Sri Madhava Sami Pataha Upavishta Mudavishta Manyamana Kritarthantam Krishnasya Dayato Siti Shlaghante Sma Parasparam. Once a group of exalted sages were at Prayag, the best of pilgrimage sites, during the month of Magh. The sages had taken their bath and were happily seated before the deity of Sri Madhava, feeling satisfied as if all their goals in life had been fulfilled. They were praising one another, saying, "You are the recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy." Tadeva saprasangam prastavati. So now he begins the actual history. The sages at Prayag were humble devotees of Krishna. Satam hrimatam desham atmashlagha parama anuchita. Because saintly souls are naturally shy, and it is most inappropriate for them to glorify themselves. Therefore, they refer to somebody else as being most dear to Lord Krishna. Each of them disliked hearing himself praised and was just trying to divert the praise to someone else. Appreciative of one another's good qualities, they could honestly tell one another, "You're the Lord's dearmost devotee." When Vaishnavas are friendly to one another like this, their community prospers. Prayag is called Tirthamurdhanya, the chief of holy places, because it is located at the confluence of the rivers Ganga and Yamuna. The sages were there at the most auspicious time. For bathing, the month of Magh, which is between January and February. As Dattatreya, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, has explained, Vratadana tapobhishya nattatha priyate harihi maghe majjana matrena yatha prinati madhavaha. The Supreme Lord Madhava is not as pleased by vows, charity, or austere penances as by one's simply taking a bath in the month of Magha. Maghe pratasnanam cha Sri Madhava Bhaktaveva Paryavasyati. Sanatana Goswami has remarked that taking an early morning bath at the time of Magh, first of all, that's a very, very great activity of austerity. Maghasnana, Pratah Maghasnana, to take bath early morning in the month of Magh in a holy river is considered a very, very great act of austerity, glorified very much in the Puranas. But that culminates in devotion service to Sri Madhava. Sri Madhava is the presiding deity of Prayag Tirtha. After bathing, the sages were sitting in front of Lord Madhava, feeling extremely fortunate to be together in such a sacred place. At such a time, Matas Tadani Tatraiva Vipravarya Samagataha Dashashvam Medhike Tirthe Bhagavad Bhakti Tatparaha. Dear mother, at that time, a first-class Brahmana arrived at that holy site called the Shashwamedha Tirtha. He was fully absorbed in devotion service to the Supreme Lord. Sevito Shesha Sampadhis Taddeshasyadhi Karavan Vritah Parijaner Vipra Bhojanartham Kritodyamaha. Richly endowed with all assets, he was the spiritual leader of that region. His retinue surrounded him as he prepared to distribute food to the local Brahmanas. So he had wealth, he had followers, he had food, he had water, or drinks, and so on. Vichitrot Krishna Vastuni Sanishpadya Mahamana Avashyakam Samapyadau Samskrityam Mahatim Sthavim. Having collected all sorts of valuable items for worship of the Lord, the generous Brahmana then sought to the preliminaries, first by purifying a large area on the ground. Sheshabhi Sampadhi Dhananjanana Panadiki Sevita Parivriddha Such a Vipravaraha Vichitrani Vidhani Krishnani Vastuni Bhogyadi Dravyani Nishpadya Sathayatva. So he organized all kinds of items, enjoyable items for the Supreme Lord. Satvaram Chatvaram Tatra Madhye Nirmaya Sundaram Upalipya Swahastena Vitananyudatanayat. There he swiftly built a handsome altar, which he smeared with mud with his own hand and covered with a canopy. The unnamed Brahmana who came to conduct public worship of Lord Krishna at the Shashwamedha Ghat was the acknowledged spiritual authority of that area. Although rich and influential with ample means for a comfortable life, he was a fully surrendered Vaishnava. Everything he had, he used only for Lord Krishna's pleasure. By his heartfelt service, he satisfied the Lord and everyone else. At this same, the Shashwamedha Ghat, this is Gauranga goes on explanation. At this same, the Shashwamedha Ghat at Prayag, Ilarupa Goswami later received personal instructions from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 10 days. Salagrama Shilarupam Krishnam Swarna Sane Shubhe Niveshya Bhaktya Sampujya Yatha Vidhi Muda Hritaha. Next he placed Lord Krishna's form as the Shalagrama Shila on an auspicious golden throne and worshipped the Lord with great devotion. Joyfully he performed the prescribed rituals. The Salagrama Shila is a sacred stone worshipped by Vaishnava Brahmanas as a deity form of Lord Vishnu. The stones are found only in the Gandaki river near the village of Salagram in the Himalayan foothills. So precise is the science of Archana that an expert Brahmana can recognize each Shalagrama Shila as a specific incarnation of Lord Vishnu by unique markings. This is entirely Gauranga Prabhu's remark. So he, where is it? He worshipped the Supreme Lord. Vishnam Yathavidhi, Padya, Arghya, Adi, Upachara Samarpana Purvakam. So he offered Padya, Arghya, and other items which are used for worship. Bhaktya Sampujya Mahotsavam Chakrayati Dvabhyam. He is doing all these things in order to create a big festival. Bhogam Baradi Samagrim Arpayatvad Grito Hare. Swayam Nityan Gitavadyadibhischakre Mahotsavam. In front of Lord Hari, he placed food, clothes, and other offerings. He made a one-man festival by dancing, singing, playing music, and so on. When worshipping the deity of the Supreme Lord, one should first greet him as an honorable guest with water for washing his feet, scented water for drinking, and other items prescribed by standard etiquette. One should feed the deity nicely and offer gifts of cloth and other valuables such as perfumes and incense. The lamp offered in the Arati ceremony represents the light one would show at the entrance of one's house for a guest arriving at night. Aratrikam. This is Gopi Brahman's remark. Slightly paraphrasing the commentary. Tato Veda Puranadi Vyakhya Vada Kovidam. Vidvan Pranamya Yatino, Grihino, Brahmacharinaha. He then offered homage to the Brahmanas present, who were expert in arguing from the Vedas, Puranas, and other texts. He also offered respects to the sannyasis, householders, and brahmacharis. Vaishnavamscha Sada Krishna Kirtanananda Lampatam Subhahun Mathurair Vakyar Vyavahareischa Harshayan. And he ordered the Vaishnavas, who were always greedy to enjoy the bliss of glorifying Krishna. Thus, he encouraged the many respectable persons there with attractive words and behavior. Padashauchat Jalam Desham Dharayan Shirasi Swayam Bhagavat Yarpitaistadvad Dannadibhira Pujaya. After placing on his head the water that had washed their feet, he worshipped those persons with the food and other items he had presented to the Supreme Lord. So they were expert in, so he had offered respects to Brahmanas who were very scholarly and who were expert in disputing about the teachings of the Vedas. These were the Vipras, the Brahmanas. But then Sanatana Goswami then began to talk about the Vaishnavas. Evam Vipranam Lakshanam Uktva Vaishnavanam Lakshanamaha Sada Krishna. Yadyapi Vaishnaveshu Api Madhye Brahmana Santi Eva Iti Tesham Ubhayesham Bhindataya Nirdesho Na Ghatate. Tathapi Brahmana Vitrikta Grihita Vishnu Dikshakaha Parepi Vartante. Tatha Vaishnava Diksha Mahitascha Brahmana Santi Iti Prasannirdesho Yuktayeva. Why is he referring to Vaishnavas and Brahmanas separately, even though within the Vaishnava group there were Brahmanas? That is because there were personalities who were not Brahmanas, but who had taken initiation in a Vishnu mantra. And there are also Brahmanas who had not taken initiation in the Vishnu mantra. So therefore, he's referring to them distinctly. One class of learned Brahmanas like to display their knowledge by defeating others in argument. But another class of Brahmanas, the pure Vaishnavas, prefer to use their energy to hear and chant about Krishna. Some Vaishnavas are also Brahmanas by birth and external behavior. But pure Vaishnavas of any social status, even those who come from lower castes, are always better situated spiritually than ordinary Brahmanas. Pure Vaishnavas bother to enter debates only when the cause of Krishna consciousness can be advanced, when criticisms of other Vaishnavas or the Supreme Lord have to be answered, or when victims of misconceptions have to be saved. Only under these circumstances do pure Vaishnavas bother to enter debates. This is clear from an important book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Jaiva Dharma. time to do the Brahmana Vaishnava conducting this festival honored the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas with pleasant, encouraging words and with respectful behavior, bowing down to them, washing their feet, offering them arati, and so on. Bhojayatva tato deenam antyajan api sadharam ato shayad yatha nyayam shvashringala khagakramin. Next, he respectfully fed everyone else, including the most fallen outcasts. In suitable ways, he satisfied even the dogs, jackals, birds, and insects. Dina, bhaktyadihinan shudran. He was very respectful towards wretched persons. Wretched persons refers to Shudras who were devoid of devotional service to the Supreme Lord and so on. Another meaning, Yadva, Shudhadina Artham, for those who are simply suffering due to hunger and so on. Yathanyayam ityasya sarvatraiva anushangaha. When it says that he dealt with everyone respectfully, he satisfied everyone, it was as suitable. Shudras and outcasts are commonly considered fallen, and men who are poor and hungry are usually identified as wretched. But the real criteria of a person's fallen, wretched condition is his lack of devotion to the Supreme Lord. One who wants to worship Lord Hari perpetually by Nama Sankirtana must give up demanding respect for himself and must practice showing respect to every living creature. But the respect one shows must be appropriate for each individual. Only a fool would embrace a hungry tiger in the name of brotherly love. And so a devotee endeavoring for pure Krishna consciousness should keep a respectful distance from persons of dubious character and faith. Respectful distance, not disrespectful distance. Even if you keep away from them, if you maintain an attitude of respect. Here we notice this Brahmana, he respectfully fed everyone, including the most fallen outcasts. They're devoid of devotion, service to Krishna. Still, he feeds them, and he feeds them respectfully, not disrespectfully. Up to the dogs, jackals, birds, and insects, this Brahmana is respectful, as appropriate. That's there, but respectful. You don't come across a situation where he is disrespectful to the Shudras and so on. There is always a background fear that if you introduce a Varnashrama system, if you start identifying the Varnas of devotees, then they will be disrespected. But you can see here, this is the beginning of Bhagavatamrita. The lowermost, you'll come across the lowermost platform of what Sanatana Goswami considers to be devotion service to Krishna, the lowest level. And even here you'll find this Vaishnava Brahmana very respectful to all the Varnas. And he's even very respectful to the most fallen outcasts. Respectful. Respect, you give more respect, most respect, even greater respect, all that. But there's no disrespect. That doesn't mean that we have to agree with everyone, but that is respect. Very, very important to understand. In Vedic civilization, we are trained to be respectful. Evam santarpita shesha samadishto atha sadhu parivarai samam shesham saharsham bhujem mritam. When he had thus satisfied everyone, the holy men invited him to take the remnants of the sacrifice. With his family and followers, that leader of Brahmanas then enjoyed the nectarian prasad with great delight. So he had satisfied all creatures, sarvam pranijatam yena. Then he ate along with his servants, family members, and so on. Amritam Mahayagya Sheshatva, Parama Madharatva, Mrityu Nivartakatva, Parama Sukha Mayatvacha. The prasad has been described as nectarian for several reasons. Because it is the remnant from a great sacrifice. Because it is extremely sweet. Because it can prevent one from experiencing death. And because it's filled with exquisite bliss. Only after every living being in the vicinity was fed and pleased did the host with his family and servants honor Lord Madhava's prasad. This food was now Amrita, the elixir of immortality, a sheer delight to taste because it had been offered to Lord Krishna in devotional sacrifice. Tato bhi mukham agatya Krishnasya prachitanjalihi tasmaneva payamasa sarvam tat phala sanchayam. After this, he again went before the Shalagram deity of Lord Krishna, and with folded hands, he offered to the Lord all the pious credit he had earned by the sacrifice. Tasya purvokta akhila karmanaha phala sanchaya. So he offered the results of all these auspicious activities that he had performed, auspicious activities that have been described now. Prabhu gives some explanation of this. In sacrificial offerings, the mantras chanted declare that the oblations after being offered belong to the deities being worshipped. Idam Indrayana Mama. This is for Indra. It is no longer mine. But most performers of Vedic rituals, even while verbally declaring surrender, maintain the subtle ambition to possess not only the oblations themselves, but the fruits, the outcome of the sacrifice. Pure devotion service begins when one makes offerings only for the pleasure of the Supreme, with no hidden motive. Hidden motive. There is no way one can make tangible progress in Krishna consciousness. If within one lifetime, if one has motives other than to progress in Krishna consciousness. Sukham samvishya devam tam swagriham gantamudyatam Durat Shri Narato Dishvo Thito Munisama Jataha. The leader of the Brahmanas put the deity comfortably to rest and got ready to return home. Shri Narada, however, had been watching him at a distance from within the assembly of sages. Just then Narada stood up. Narada praises the Prayag Brahmana. Ayam eva Mahavishnu Prayaniti Mukhurvan Dhavan Gatwan Tiketasya Viprendras Yedam Abravit Shri Krishna Paramo Krishna Kripaya Bhajanam Janam Loke Vikhyavayan Vyaktam Bhagavat Bhaktilam Pataha. Again and again, Narada announced, this is the Supreme Lord Vishnu's most dear devotee. Then he ran up to the Brahmana and declared him the recipient of Lord Krishna's highest mercy. Narada proclaimed this openly to all, beside himself with eagerness for devotional service to Lord Krishna. He declared him a recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. Yes. Narada had been enjoying the festival incognito, but the ecstasies he was tasting in pure love impelled him to announce his realizations. All the Lord's devotees are dear to the Lord, as implied here by the word Janam, which can mean either people in general or some specific person. Narada knows whom the Lord most favors, and thus the word Janam also expresses a more confidential idea in Narada's mind. He's ultimately referring to the dearest servant of Sri Krishna, Srimati Radha Rani. The Brahmana and the other devotees, Narada will praise, are also aware of their own lesser devotional standing. Narada here speaks mainly to enlighten the public, but also to gain the impetus for his expedition to the far ends of the universe in search of Sri Krishna's best devotees. This portion is Gauranga own remark. In Narada Vacha, Bhavan Viprendra Krishnasya Mahanugraha Bhajanam Yasyedam Yasyedrisham Dhanam Dravyam Audaryam Vaibhavam Tatha. In Narada said, O leader of the Brahmanas, it is you who have received Lord Krishna's greatest favor. After all, you have such wealth, property, generosity, and personal opulence. Sadharma padakam tatcha sarvameva mahamate drishtam hi sakshat asmabhir asmistirtha varethuna. O wise one, in this best of holy places, we have now seen for ourselves that you are using all these assets exclusively to establish pure religion. What is this pure religion? Sadharma, Bhagavad Bhakti Lakshana Dharma. Pure Dharma or Sadharma is that which is characterized by devotion, service unto the Supreme Personality of God. That kind of Dharma. The Brahmana's personal opulence is the paraphernalia showing his status, his vehicles, special items of clothing, and so on, and his entourage of family members, associates, and subordinates. His pure religion is devotion service to the personality of God. The Brahmana did not abuse any of his apparently material assets by employing them for material purposes. The assets had come to him as byproducts of his devotion service without his striving for them. He could hardly keep them hidden, as Narada here remarks, but still he was happy to put them to transcendental use. Why is he saying that he could not hide them? Because Narada Muni has seen with his own eyes. Iknotam cha na shakyam iti aha drishtam iti. Vidvat varena tenokto nan vidam sa mahamuni swamin kim mayi krishnasya kripalakshananichitam aham varaka. Sorry. The Brahmana refutes Narada's praise. That most learned Brahmana then replied to the best of sages, O Master, what signs of Krishna's mercy have you seen on me? Aham varaka kono syam datum shaknomi vakyat vaibhavam vartate kim me bhagavad bhajanam kutaha. Who am I but a most wretched person? How much charity am I able to give? What opulence do I have? And how have I ever reciprocated with the Lord in devotion service? Any true devotee of Krishna considers himself insignificant, thinking himself one of countless jivas who are mere sparks of God's splendor. The devotee is sorry for having foolishly rebelled against his creator. And reflecting on this rebellion, he thinks that his relative influence among other fallen jivas means little. This is also Gauranga Prabhu's own realization. The Brahmana sends Narada to the southern king. Kintu Dakshina Deshe yo Maharajo Virajate Sahi Krishna Kripapatram Yasya Deshe Suralayaha. But in the southern country, there lives a great ruler whose kingdom has many temples of God and the demigods. He is the true recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. Sarvato Bhikshavo Yatra Tayatikha Bhyagata Daya Krishnarpitannam Bhunjana Brahmanti Sukhina Sada. Saintly mendicants come to his kingdom from all directions, along with pilgrims and other visitors. They wander happily, sustained by food that has been offered to Krishna. Sri Sanatana Goswami's remark, Tad Deshan Nikatavartinam Katipayan Nirvanam Adhirajatvena Nattu Chakravartitvena. Tadanim Sri Yudhishthirasya Chakravartitvat. At that time, that southern king refers to the king of a few kings, not the emperor. The emperor at that time was Sri Yudhishthira. Ateva agre sarvabhauma iti vakshyati. Deshe rashtre suralaya devasthanani tairthikas tirthasnanadyartham paryantanto kinchana abhyagata anyatita. Okay, these are all already covered. Sri Krishna arpitatvat annasya pavitriyam madhuryadikam mukhi. Because the foodstuffs that they were sustaining themselves by, they wandered happily, sustained the food that has been offered to Krishna. Because this food has been offered to Krishna. It is understood that the foodstuffs were very pure and they were very sweet and so on. The Brahmana describes the great king as a Maharaja, the ruler of several other kings in this area, in his area. He was not the emperor of the entire continent. The Chakravarti, that higher position was occupied at the time by the Pandava Yudhishthira. Later in this chapter, the southern king will also be called Sarvabhauma because his kingdom occupied a large area. Many accomplished saints migrated to his kingdom, attracted by his spiritual features. Other people also came, including ordinary visitors, renounced pilgrims traveling to purify themselves, and distressed persons in search of food and shelter. All of them took advantage of the sacred, delicious Krishna Prasad freely available throughout the kingdom. It is our duty to also make this arrangement. Rajadhani Samipecha Sachidananda Vigraha Sakshadivaste Bhagavan Karunyat Sthiratam Gataha. Near this king's palace, the personality of Godhead resides as if directly in his original form of eternal existence, knowledge, and bliss. He is kindly assumed a non-moving appearance. Sthiratam Gata iti praya achala rupatam bodhayati. Most of the time, the deity does not move. The Lord's incarnation as the deity in a temple is stationary, at least to ordinary eyes. He is the same absolute person who lives in the spiritual world, yet he assumes special form to make himself visible to everyone. The Lord's pastime incarnations, who move about displaying adventures with their devotees, are rarely seen in this cosmic manifestation. But the Vishnu deity in this king's capital was so potent and attractive that the citizens almost forgot he was a non-moving deity. Now, one point to note here. We know in the Varnashrama system, the Brahmanas are superior to Kshatriyas. Amongst the Kshatriyas, one particular Kshatriya is anointed as the king. The Brahmana does not have his ego. Because I am a Brahmana, I am superior to all Kshatriyas, including this particular Kshatriya. And I am a Vaishnava, and therefore I am automatically superior in Krishna consciousness also to the Kshatriyas, including this king. He doesn't think like that. He recognizes, yes, there is a hierarchy in Varnashrama Dharma, but there is something superior. There is a hierarchy of pure devotion service unto the Supreme Lord. This king was a greater devotee of Lord Krishna, and the Brahmana clearly recognizes that. We will come to that point very explicitly now. Nityam navanavastatra jayate paramotsava puja dravyan cheshtani nutanani pratikshanam. In that kingdom, a joyous, ever fresh festival is always being celebrated. At each moment, there are new offerings and performances of worship. The worship in the main temple of the capital never became stale and ritualistic. New items of worship were constantly introduced. And more important, the devotees' interest in pleasing the Lord was also ever fresh. Thus, the displays of worship pleased both the deity and the public. Vishnu niveditaistu sarve tad deshavasinaha vaideshikascha bhavo bhojyante tena sadaram. The king respectfully feeds all the residents of his country and the many foreign visitors with the remnants of Lord Vishnu's worship. Tena Maharajena Purvam Tat Rashtre Sarvatra Grama Nagaradishu Itastato Papushu Devalayeshu Bhikshu Prabhutina Annam Bhojanatham Sukhamanam Uttam. Idanim Rajadhani Nikate Mukhya Shri Bhagavatamrita iti Sheshaha. Previously it was noted that in the many temples that were there in his kingdom, there was a lot of happy movement, traveling by beggars or sannyasis in order to get the food that they wanted. Now, it is pointed out that there was a chief temple for the Supreme Personality of Godhead near his capital. To accommodate all the residents and travelers, the king maintained many Vishnu temples throughout the country. But the main temple in the capital was especially famous for its worship and prasad. Devas Tasya Darshanalobhataha Mahaprasadarupanna Dyubhambhoga Sukhamtitaha Sadhu Sangati Labhacha Nanadeshat Samagatah Nivasantis Sadatatra Santo Vishnu Parayana. Saintly devotees of Lord Vishnu come from various countries to reside permanently in the kingdom. They come out of eagerness to see the lotus-eyed deity of the Lord, to relish the food and other special remnants from the Lord, and to obtain the association of spiritually advanced persons. Besides pure devotees of Vishnu, other spiritualists also came. Those dressed as holy men, but spiritually not fully qualified, were also treated with respect. Even cats and dogs should receive Lord Krishna's prasad. But for spiritual guidance, one should approach only bona fide followers of the Vaishnava Parampara. Let's go Vidvan and Rosaruma. Deshascha deva viprebhyo radhya datto vibhajyasa no padravos tad deshe kopi shoko thava bhayam. The king has given his kingdom away to the demigods and brahmanas, dividing it among them. His kingdom is completely free from sorrow, social disruption, and fear. The king granted to the presiding deities of local temples and to the brahmanas of each region official title to the various parts of the country. He considered himself merely the caretaker of the kingdom, under authority from its legal owners. So humble. Akrishtapatyas abhumi krishtistatra yatha sukha ishtani phalamulani sulabhani ambarani cha. In that kingdom, the earth yields crops without being tilled. Rain falls just enough for people's comfort. And whatever fruits, vegetables, and clothing one desires are easily to be had. Ishtani, priyani, anuvartante, pritya tad agyapalana shila ityartha. Here, whatever fruits, vegetables, and clothing one desires are easily to be had. As if They were following the instructions or the commandments of the king. In accordance with his activities, the kingdom was being blessed with all these things. Gauranga was remarked. In the Bible, we read that God punished Adam for rebellion by cursing him. That outside the Garden of Eden, he would have to till the earth to earn his food by the sweat of his face. Previously, the Bible tells us Adam and Eve had enjoyed the fruits of Eden without having to farm. The same ideal condition prevailed thousands of years ago in the South Indian kingdom. Rain fell just enough to make good crops, but mostly at night when it would least disturb the citizens. This is a good description of how a civilization should actually be considered prosperous. It should be considered criteria for the prosperity of a certain set of people. Civilization does not mean you go on building some cars and vehicles and this and that. How happy are the people naturally? Swasva dharma krita sarva sukhinya krishna tappara prajastam manavardante maharajam yathasta. The citizens all happily follow the king as if they were his children. They perform their own social duties and are devoted to Lord Krishna. Everyone performs his own social duty and they're devoted to Lord Krishna. They follow the king as if they were his children. Like children who love and respect their parents, the citizens not only obeyed the king's directions, but also wanted to follow the example of his good character. So again, it's clear, look, swaswa dharma kritaha. They were performing their own social duties and still they were happy. They were happy. Not that because they belonged to the particular varnas, they had particular labels, therefore they're all unhappy and you don't know how to respect everyone. Here we can see, we have a Brahmana and he directly tells Narada Muni that this king is a far greater devotee than me. And while describing his kingdom, he describes that this kingdom had citizens who were performing their respective duties. First of all, there are duties by gender. There are duties for women and duties for men. For men, there are duties by varna, there are duties by ashram. A Brahmana is, as a general principle, a Brahmana is allowed to be a brahmachari or a grihastha or a vanaprastha or sannyasi. A kshatriya is allowed to be a brahmachari or a grihastha or vanaprastha. He is expected to move up to vanaprastha, not more than that. He's not allowed generally. In fact, a kshatriya, as long as he has the guna dharma of a kshatriya, he's not allowed to take sannyasa. Similarly, a vaishya, he can be a brahmachari or a grihastha, only that much. A shudra, he can only be a grihastha. So these are all particular boundaries. And the men and women, they are following their respective boundaries and they were happy. Swaswa dharma krita sarva sukhinyaha krishna tatpara. They were devoted to Krishna and they were following their respective limited roles. They were very attached to the king also. Sachagarva sadani cha yogya seva virachutam bhajamano kilanokan ramayat priya. The king is always prideless. Worshipping Lord Achyuta with services a menial assistant would perform. He pleases all the people and is dear to the Lord. Etadrisha rajya vaibhava dharma bhagavat seva atishaye satyapi nirhankaraha son. Even though he had an abundance of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in dharma, with the opulence of a kingdom of this kind, still he did not have ahankar or false ego. Nicheti nichabhi swayam sammarjana lepana deepika grahanadi yogya seva. Still he engaged in various services, menial services, cleaning, mopping, holding lamps, and so on. Achyuta priyati kevalam premnaiva bhajanam bodhayati. Love for Lord Achyuta. So vast and rich a domain and such a reputation for religious accomplishments would make an ordinary king proud. But this Maharaja was a pure Vaishnava. He was happy to serve the Lord, Supreme Lord in the humblest ways, washing and decorating the floors of his temples, keeping the temple lamps filled with oil and so on. As the term Achyuta Priya indicates, he did this not to make a show of humility, but purely out of devotional enthusiasm. तस्याग्रे विविधैर्नाम गाथा संकीर्तनैः स्वयं नृत्यं दिव्यानि गीतानि गायन् वाद्यानि वादयन् भ्रातृ भार्या सुतैः पौत्रैः भृत्यामात्य पुरोहितैः अन्यैश्च स्वजनैः साकं प्रभुं तं तोषयेत् सदा. He always tries to satisfy the Lord. He himself performs sankirtan before the Lord's deity, chanting the Lord's names composed in various attractive arrangements. He dances, sings wonderful songs, and plays instruments. His sons, wives, brothers, grandsons, priests, servants, ministers, and other subordinates, he has them also take part. How does he enthusiastically engage in devotional service? That is now shown in these two verses. Tadeva darshyata dvabhyam. Bhratri bhagyetyanena tasya bhratri prabhritina api parama vaishnavadyo. By referring to his brothers, wives, and so on, it is indicated that all of them were also exalted Vaishnavas. The king did not have to force his relatives and assistants to take part in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, because they were all first-class Vaishnavas. Te te tasya gunam vrata Krishnam bhaktyano vartinah sankhyatum katikachyante gyayante kativamaya. These good qualities arise from his devotion for Krishna. How many of them can I count, describe, or even be aware of? I am bhavaha. This is how he was thinking. Uktani sarvani etani eva bhagavad kripa lakshanani. All of this that I have described so far, all of them are actually symptoms of the receipt of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ataha sa eva bhagavad kripa patram nattoham tattat abhavat iditi. Therefore, it is he who is a recipient of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not I. I'm not a recipient, because I don't have symptoms of receipt of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Evam agrepi sarvatra ukhyam. This is the basic idea that you will see throughout this book. Evam cha jati anapekshaya kevalam bhagavad kripa visheshadeva mahatmyam darshitam. Now here, without considering his birth, only by the mercy of, only by the special mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this king has been shown to be greater. Anyatha brahmana kshatriyasya mahima anupapattehe, because otherwise it would be inappropriate to say that a kshatriya is glorious, more glorious than in comparison to a brahmana. Etat brahmana adinam cha sarvesham api kirthartatvam agre Shri Bhagavata eva swayam vakshyate. That these brahmanas and others are successful. The Prayag Brahman and others, they were successful. That will be noted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Kevalam taratamya matram etacha agre vyaktam bhavi. However, there's a hierarchy. It is that hierarchy which will be shown. The Brahmana's logic is as follows. The king's good qualities are mentioned are all signs of his being the true recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. I do not have the same mercy because I do not have the same good qualities. Each of the devotees approached by Narada will argue in a similar way. In fact, however, all these devotees are very fortunate even if they stand on different levels of perfection. The differences recognized by Narada and those with whom he speaks are spiritual differences, not determined by material rank or position. The devotee Brahmana would not have called the king from the south a better Vaishnava than himself had the Brahmana held a prejudice that Brahmanas are always better than Kshatriya. All right. Questions? No questions? All right. If you have any questions, you can ask in Telegram also. Right.
How is your health, Prabhuji?
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.